What if I told you that you've already died, and everything you're experiencing right now is the afterlife? Might sound like a wild claim, but think about it. Deep down, haven't you always felt that something about this world just doesn't quite add up? Like you've been dropped into a story that began long before you arrived, only you can't remember how it started. Maybe it's that gnawing feeling that time is just a loop, or that your memories are too fragmented to explain the depth of your emotions. Maybe you've sensed that the world isn't what it pretends to be, that life feels too scripted, too symbolic, too perfect in its imperfections. That's not your imagination. That's your soul remembering, because here's the forbidden idea they don't want you to entertain. What if this isn't the life that leads to the afterlife, but the one that follows it? Let that sink in. What if you've already crossed over, and this entire experience, this waking life, isn't the beginning, but the continuation? What if the veil you think separates life from death is far thinner than you've been led to believe? Not a wall, but a mist. Not a destination you reach, but a dream you enter. Maybe the moment you thought you were born was actually the moment your consciousness was uploaded into this next realm. And before you reject that idea as fantasy, pause. Ask yourself, why does this world feel both familiar and foreign? Why do you sometimes feel as though you're sleepwalking through a play written long ago? Why do moments of déjà vu hit you with such force? Not as memories of this life, but echoes of something before it. It's because your soul remembers what your mind has been taught to forget. You've been told that death is the end, that life is a straight line, and when your body dies, then something else begins. But what if death is a transition, not a doorway you walk through once, but a recurring portal you've already passed? What if you're not here to prepare for death, but to awaken within it? What you call life might just be one level of a vast, multidimensional reality, a classroom designed for growth, refinement, remembering. And this world, with all its heartbreak and beauty, its pain and wonder, is a realm where souls gather to evolve. It's not the before life, it's not the waiting room, it's not the rehearsal. This is the afterlife, and you're already inside it. You might be wondering, if this is the afterlife, then where are the angels? Where are the harps and clouds? The answers are hiding in plain sight, disguised in symbols, synchronicities, strange dreams, and unexplainable moments that pull you towards something deeper. This world isn't punishment, it's process. You're not here by mistake, you're here by initiation. Every religion has tried to describe it in pieces: heaven, nirvana, the astral plane, reincarnation, judgment, paradise. But what if those aren't separate destinations, but fragmented memories of this very place? What if you're in it right now, but you've forgotten, because forgetting is part of the journey? Imagine for a moment that you've just left your previous life. The light faded, the sounds disappeared, the body dissolved. And instead of resting in some endless peace, you found yourself back in a new version of reality, a rendered world, one that felt real, tangible, full of rules and consequences. One that gave you a new identity, a new name, a new storyline to follow. But somewhere inside you, the memory of who you truly are couldn't be erased. It just got buried beneath the noise. That memory speaks in the moments you feel most lost, or most awake. It whispers to you in dreams where you feel more you than you do in daylight. It echoes through the questions you can't stop asking: who am I? Why am I here? What happens when I die? These questions aren't coming from a brain, they're coming from your awareness, your essence. The part of you that knows this isn't the full story. And let's be honest, you've always suspected this life is more than what it claims to be, haven't you? Look at how reality bends around your beliefs, how your thoughts shape your experiences, how emotions ripple into events. This isn't random, this is programming, not in a cold, computer-like way, but in a vibrational, consciousness, designed way. You're not just living inside a physical universe, you're navigating a curated experience, one tailored to your evolution. The pain you felt, it wasn't to break you, it was to awaken you. The loss you endured, that wasn't the end of something, it was a test to remember what's eternal. Every heartbreak was a mirror. Every joy was a breadcrumb. Every strange coincidence was a glitch in the illusion, designed to make you ask, is this real? And once you start asking, you're no longer asleep, You're beginning to wake up inside the afterlife. But here's the thing. You were never meant to stay asleep forever. Forgetting who you are is just the first step. Remembering, that's where the real journey begins. And that's what this life is, a process of remembering. Not just your past or your purpose, but your nature. You are not a mind stuck in a body. You are not a product of your trauma. You are not a label or a role. You are awareness, pure, formless, indestructible. You are the light behind the eyes, the silent witness of every moment. And once you glimpse that truth, even for a second, the illusion begins to crack. You start seeing through the veil. You begin noticing how life isn't just happening to you, it's responding to you. You see how the system bends when you question it, how energy shifts when you align with your deeper self. These aren't metaphors, they're mechanics of the afterlife. You are not living to reach the afterlife. You are living in it. So now comes the real question. Not, what happens after I die? But, what will I do knowing I've already died? How does it change the way you see love, fear, conflict, time? If this isn't the warm-up, if this isn't the simulation before the simulation, if this is the place you came to awaken, then the clock is already ticking, not toward death, but toward awakening. The mission isn't to survive. The mission is to remember. Look around. The signs are everywhere. The ones you call coincidences. The people who show up exactly when you need them. The dreams that feel more real than waking life. The moments when you know something before it happens. These aren't anomalies. They're clues. They're the system nudging you, saying, you're not in Kansas anymore. You're not in the womb. You're not waiting for heaven. You're walking through it with your eyes half open. And now, you're being asked to open them fully. Because this isn't just a theory. It's a mirror, and the reflection it shows you is this. You are not preparing to die. You've already passed that threshold. And now, your soul is asking you to stop pretending that this is the beginning, and start remembering that it's the continuation. The veil is thinner than ever. The truth is echoing louder. And now that you've heard it, you can't unhear it. So the only question that matters now is this. What will you do with the knowing that you're already living in the afterlife? What if everything you think is solid, grounded, and real, is just another layer of the dream, a dream so intricate, so convincingly crafted, that you've mistaken it for reality? You wake up each morning convinced that the world around you is the base level of truth. You trust the ground beneath your feet, the ticking of the clock, the pull of gravity. But haven't you also had dreams, vivid, detailed, emotionally rich, where for a time you were completely convinced that was real too? Where you ran, wept, fell in love, or flew through skies that felt as tangible as the breath you're taking now. And in that moment, you didn't know it was a dream. You believed it. You lived it. It wasn't until you woke up that you realized the entire thing was an illusion. And even then, part of you still felt it was realer than real. So here's the question that cracks the mind wide open. How do you know this life, this so-called waking world, isn't just another level of the same dream, one with more consistent physics, better memory retention, and rules that don't change as quickly, but still a dream nonetheless? You see, dreams have layers, and so does reality. You already experience this when you dream within a dream, when you wake up only to realize you're still inside another illusion. But what if that concept doesn't stop with sleep? What if your waking life is simply the next layer of a much grander simulation? What if you never really wake up, until you wake up beyond the body? It sounds unsettling at first, because you've built your life on the assumption that what you see, touch, and think is a stable truth. But what if it's not truth you're experiencing? What if it's coherence? What if your mind is rendering the illusion so seamlessly, so synchronously that you believe it's reality, when in fact, it's just a sandbox for consciousness? Think about how easily your perception can be manipulated. In dreams, time bends and loops. 1 minute can stretch into what feels like hours, faces morph, stories collapse. Yet, you go along with it, no questions asked. Only upon waking do you say, that didn't make sense. But the same thing happens here. The linearity of time is an illusion. You remember the past, you anticipate the future, but you only ever exist now, just like in dreams. Have you ever noticed how people in dreams often represent fragments of yourself? Your fears, desires, unresolved emotions. They show up in symbolic form, sometimes as strangers, sometimes as loved ones. And the dream adapts to your internal state. When you're anxious, the dream turns chaotic. When you're at peace, it becomes harmonious. But isn't that exactly what happens in waking life? Your outer world mirrors your inner state. When you're angry, life reflects it. When you're joyful, the universe feels lighter. You draw people, events, and patterns that seem to match the vibration you're carrying inside. That's not randomness. That's the code behind the dream. That's the deeper algorithm revealing itself. And here's what most never ask: who is the dreamer? Because if you're inside the dream, observing the events, reacting to the story, then who is the one experiencing it all? Who is behind the eyes, behind the thoughts, behind the observer? The answer isn't your name, it's not your identity, it's not the character you play. The real answer is awareness, the still, silent witness that was there before you formed a single memory. The one that hasn't aged, hasn't changed, hasn't flickered. The awareness that watches your dreams when you sleep and continues watching when you awaken. The constant presence. The one thing that doesn't come and go. Now consider this. If awareness is the constant, and all experiences are temporary, then the world you call real is no more real than a dream. It's another passing experience. Vivid, yes. Emotional, yes. But temporary nonetheless. And what's temporary cannot be absolute. What if you're in a lucid simulation right now, only the lucidity hasn't fully kicked in yet? What if waking up doesn't mean opening your eyes, but opening your perception? You might say, but dreams dissolve, this world stays. That's only because this layer of the dream is more persistent. It's the same engine with more complex rendering, just like a high-resolution video game feels more immersive than an 8-bit version. Same illusion, better graphics. This world responds to belief. It mirrors conviction. Have you noticed? When you believe you'll fail, obstacles appear. When you believe you're loved, doors open. That's not coincidence. That's your consciousness bending the code. And if that's true, then what kind of world is this? Is it a fixed external universe? Or a living dream, shaped by the dreamer? Quantum physics hints at the same mystery. At the subatomic level, particles don't exist in any defined state until observed. They remain in probability fields, unrealized potential, until consciousness collapses them into form. In other words, nothing exists with certainty until you look at it. Sound familiar? That's how dreams work. You don't see the hallway in a dream until you decide to walk down it. You don't hear the music until you're paying attention. The world unfolds according to your focus. So why would waking life be any different? If reality is observer-dependent, then your role as the observer isn't passive, it's creative. You're not watching reality unfold. You're co-creating it with every breath, every thought, every emotional charge. Which means you're not just in the dream, you're part of the code. You've been taught to trust your senses. But senses are filters. They show you what the system is designed to show. They don't show you everything. They show you enough to keep the illusion consistent. Your eyes can't see ultraviolet, your ears can't hear ultrasonic. Your brain filters out 99% of stimuli so you can function in the version of the dream you call waking life. That doesn't mean those other layers don't exist. It just means your avatar isn't programmed to perceive them yet, but there are moments. Cracks in the illusion. When something bleeds through. When you sense something watching you. When time slows down or speeds up without warning. When a stranger says exactly what you needed to hear. When a dream continues across multiple nights. When synchronicities pile up so perfectly, you know something is guiding it. These are the breadcrumbs. The clues. The nudges. The system is whispering, wake up, remember, this isn't all there is. Because here's the deepest truth. This dream is nested. One layer within another. You didn't just fall asleep into this life. You were placed here. You chose this level to learn something specific. To master something you couldn't grasp in simpler layers. You didn't come here to escape. You came to awaken. And awakening doesn't mean you stop playing the game. It means you start playing it consciously. Aware that it's a dream, but one that responds to the frequency you bring into it. So next time you catch yourself wondering, Is this real? Don't brush it off. Let the question pierce you. Let it sink into your bones. Because that question is the password, the key that unlocks the next layer. It's not about escaping the dream, it's about becoming the lucid dreamer who remembers their dreaming. Because once you know this world is a dream, you also know it's yours to shape, not because it's fake, but because it's fluid, and fluidity is power. The real question isn't whether this is a dream, the real question is, what kind of dream will you create now that you know? What if I told you that your brain is not the origin of your thoughts, not the source of your awareness, and not the container of who you are? You've been taught since childhood that your consciousness lives inside your head, that your identity is the result of chemical reactions and neural pathways, that your sense of self is just electricity dancing through gray matter. But what if that's the greatest illusion of all? What if your brain isn't creating consciousness, but tuning into it? Imagine a radio. It plays music, speaks in voices, brings sound into the room from seemingly nowhere. But you don't believe the voices live inside the radio, do you? You know the radio is just the receiver. The real broadcast comes from elsewhere, invisible waves moving through the air. Without the signal, the radio is silent. But the signal? It was always there. You just needed the right instrument to pick it up. That's your brain. It's not the broadcaster. It's the receiver, the tuner, the filter through which your consciousness streams into this realm. This isn't just spiritual metaphor. It's a growing scientific theory. And though mainstream science clings to the old idea that the brain generates awareness like a light bulb producing light, cracks are starting to show. There are researchers, thinkers, and brave pioneers who have begun to challenge this materialist worldview. They're pointing to something far more mysterious and far more empowering. Let's start with something that should make you pause. People who are pronounced clinically dead, flatlined with no measurable brain activity, often come back reporting vivid, coherent, life-altering experiences, detailed visions, encounters with beings of light, a panoramic review of their entire existence, all occurring at a time when, according to current medical science, their brains should not have been capable of any conscious processing at all. If consciousness depends on the brain, how do you explain consciousness continuing without it? There are cases, many, where individuals blind since birth describe colors and scenes in near-death experiences with impossible accuracy. How is that possible if vision is a function of the physical brain and eyes? There are documented stories of people undergoing surgeries with complete anesthesia, brains fully offline, yet afterward, they recount conversations between doctors, describe surgical tools they've never seen, and remember details that defy any logical explanation. If the brain was off and the senses were shut down, who was observing? Now let's take it further. Scientists have documented cases of individuals born with little to no brain matter, hydrocephalic patients, yet functioning with normal intelligence. Some even hold degrees, work jobs, live everyday lives. Their skulls, scanned by modern imaging, show a brain compressed to a thin lining along the inside of the cranium. How do you fit a full personhood, memories, emotions, intellect, into something that small? You don't, because it's not stored there. You begin to realize consciousness may not reside in the brain at all. It may interface with the brain, use it as a gateway or control panel, but its source lies outside the physical structure. The brain is not the generator, it's the decoder. This concept isn't new. In ancient mysticism, consciousness was always seen as primary, the eternal ocean from which form arises. The body was the vehicle, the mind was the map. But awareness, itself, was beyond time, beyond death, beyond physical form. And now science, slowly, is catching up with what the mystics already knew. Quantum physics adds another layer to this mystery. At the quantum level, particles behave in strange ways, existing in multiple states until observed, reacting to measurement in ways that imply the observer plays an active role in shaping reality. But who is the observer? The eye? The brain? Or is it the awareness behind the eye? The you who watches your thoughts, who chooses what to focus on, who experiences reality from the inside out? There's a growing movement of scientists proposing that consciousness isn't a byproduct of matter, but the fundamental building block of the universe. That everything, particles, energy, time itself, emerges from a field of consciousness. This flips the script. Instead of brains producing minds, reality itself is the dream of an infinite, eternal awareness. And you are a fragment of that awareness. You're not your brain, you're the signal that uses the brain, the awareness that steps into the body like a diver into a suit, not to become the suit, but to experience the depths through it. The brain filters out information more than it receives. You're bombarded with data every second, millions of bits per moment, but your brain only lets a tiny fraction through. Why? Because if you saw it all at once, the deeper truths, the infinite frequencies, you wouldn't be able to function in this particular reality. You'd remember too much. This reality isn't designed for remembering. It's designed for awakening. And that awakening begins when you realize you are not your thoughts. You are not your memories. You are not the story your mind tells you. You are the one watching those stories unfold. You're not the voice in your head. You're the silence listening to it. When you meditate, you begin to experience this. That stillness. That expansive feeling where the boundaries of the body begin to dissolve. That moment when thought stops, but you do not. That is the real you. The consciousness that remains when all else is stripped away. When people have out-of-body experiences, what they report is eerily consistent. They find themselves floating above their body, looking down at it, fully conscious, fully aware, but completely free from the biological machinery. They report moving through walls, traveling to other locations, witnessing events they later confirm. Again, how is this possible if consciousness is just a chemical reaction in the brain? It's not, because you're not inside your head. You never were. The truth is far more beautiful, and far more terrifying. You are a non-local being having a localized experience. You are the signal pretending to be the receiver, and every once in a while, something glitches, and you remember. Sometimes it happens in dreams, sometimes during trauma, sometimes during deep meditation or mystical experience. But in those rare moments, the veil lifts. You see the body as a costume, the brain as a tool, and the awareness, you, as something that cannot be touched, scanned, or measured, but can never be destroyed. If your consciousness is non-local, then it doesn't die when the body dies. It simply unplugs, transitions, moves from one frame of reality to another, like changing channels on a cosmic radio. What you call death is simply a shift in frequency. And that's why so many near-death experiences feel like waking up, because they are. So what does that mean for you now, here, in this moment? It means you're not trapped in your circumstances. You're not limited by your past. You're not defined by what happens inside your head. Your awareness is deeper than thought, bigger than form, more ancient than time. And when you stop identifying with the brain, the body, the noise, you begin to feel something sacred, something eternal, something that was always there, watching, waiting, knowing. It's time to stop mistaking the receiver for the source. Time to stop living from the surface and start listening to the silence beneath it all. Because that silence, that infinite stillness, is who you really are. And once you know that, not just intellectually, but experientially, everything begins to change. You're not a brain dreaming it's alive. You're awareness dreaming it's a brain. What if I told you that nothing exists until you look at it? That the world you see around you, the floor beneath your feet, the sky above your head, even the people you meet, all of it is waiting, quite literally, on your observation to take form. It sounds absurd, doesn't it? Like something pulled from a sci-fi film or a mystic's fever dream. And yet, the very foundations of quantum physics point to something far more astonishing than you've been led to believe. Reality does not exist independently of the observer. In fact, the act of observing is what brings it into existence. At the subatomic level, the universe doesn't behave the way you'd expect it to. Electrons don't act like little balls flying around. They act like waves, spreads of possibility, until someone looks. And the moment someone looks, measures, observes, those waves collapse into a particle, into something solid, into something real. That observation isn't just passive, it's participatory. You're not witnessing the world as a static thing outside of you. You're involved in its unfolding, directly and unavoidably. You don't enter a world that's already fully formed. You help create it by being aware of it, and that changes everything. Imagine this. Reality is not a pre-written script. It's more like a cosmic improvisation, a field of infinite potential that waits for consciousness to shape it into form. Every moment you focus, every decision you make, every belief you hold, becomes a selection, a narrowing down of that endless field of probabilities into a single experience. Your experience, that's not philosophy, that's quantum physics. Take the famous double-slit experiment. For example, when electrons are fired at a barrier with two slits and no one observes them, they behave like waves, interfering with themselves, forming a complex pattern on the other side. But when the same electrons are observed, they stop behaving like waves. They act like particles instead, choosing one slit or the other. The pattern disappears. The outcome changes simply because someone was watching. Wrap your mind around that. The very act of observation changed the behavior of matter. Awareness didn't record reality, it altered it. And if something as small as an electron can change based on attention, what does that say about everything else? What does it say about the chair you're sitting on, the room you're in, the path your life has taken? It suggests a truth most people aren't ready to hear. You're not reacting to a fixed reality. You're rendering it, moment by moment, through your consciousness. But here's where it gets even deeper. Observation isn't just about looking with your eyes. It's about awareness, focus, attention, intention. These aren't invisible, harmless thoughts floating around your head. They are mechanisms of creation. Every time you intend, you collapse a piece of the quantum field. Every time you expect something to happen, you help draw it into form. And every time you believe something deeply, you're coding your version of reality in real time. This is not metaphor. This is mechanics. And your mind is the interface. In a world where observation creates reality, your inner world becomes far more important than you ever imagined. Your thoughts are not just private musings. Your beliefs are not just harmless preferences. They are tools, levers, quantum instruments shaping the very fabric of your experience. Now ask yourself this. How much of what you believe was chosen consciously? How much of what you observe each day, your circumstances, your limitations, your struggles, is just a reflection of unconscious programming? Because if you're not consciously observing with intention, someone else is shaping the narrative for you. The world appears real because it's persistent, but don't mistake persistence for truth. Persistence just means the program is running smoothly. But like a dream that holds its form while you're in it, this reality only feels fixed because your awareness is tuned to the same expectations, the same feedback loops, the same mental scripts. But have you noticed how quickly it can glitch? Think about those strange moments, the synchronicities you can't explain, the people who show up just as you're thinking of them, the sense that time bends or stretches during intense experiences. These aren't errors. They're signs that the system is malleable, that the simulation bends when you begin to observe differently, that your inner shift causes a ripple on the outer screen. You are not a passive viewer, you are the projector. And the film you're running, it's written in your expectations, your traumas, your desires, your fears. What you call luck is often just unconscious belief aligning with rendered outcomes. What you call coincidence is feedback from the system, letting you know it's listening. And what you call reality is a hall of mirrors shaped by your focus. This is why ancient mystics, long before quantum physics, told us to guard our thoughts, to master our attention, to still the mind. Not because thoughts were bad, but because they were powerful. They knew that where your awareness goes, reality follows. That every moment you spend in fear, you collapse reality into fear-shaped outcomes. That every moment you hold a vision, with clarity and certainty, you pull that version of the world closer into manifestation. And yet, most people live as though they have no power at all. They look around and assume the world is happening to them, that their job, their relationship, their health, their fate is already decided. They stare at the results without questioning the cause, and in doing so, they render more of the same, because what you observe with certainty becomes a loop, a feedback system, a reality that says, if you insist, I'll keep being this. But what happens when you shift the observation? What happens when you stop expecting things to be hard and start expecting alignment? When you stop scanning for problems and start looking for miracles? When you stop reacting to the screen and start changing the film? The simulation doesn't resist you, it responds to you, because you are not just a body wandering through a solid world, you are awareness navigating a field of possibilities, and that field rearranges itself in real time based on your inner state. That's why changing your beliefs feels like changing your world, because it is. The quantum field doesn't care about what's real, it reflects what you're ready to see. And the more you awaken to this truth, the more fluid reality becomes. This isn't wishful thinking, it's not escapism, it's remembering that the world you see is not the world as it is, it's the world as you are, through your filters, through your lens, through your consciousness. You were never here to observe reality like a museum exhibit. You were here to shape it, bend it, direct it, but not from the outside. From within, not with force, but with focus. Every moment is a quantum doorway, every thought is a tuning fork, every emotion is a frequency, and every belief is a sculptor's hand on the clay of the universe. Reality waits for you to observe it. The question is, what will you choose to see? What if I told you that the person you see in the mirror every morning, the one with the name, the story, the memories, and the scars, is not really you, that your body is not your identity, your face is not your truth, and the entire human experience you've wrapped around yourself is more like an interface, a suit, an avatar, not the real you, but the representation of you inside this particular level of reality. It's easy to forget. The world has taught you to attach your identity to the body. From the moment you're born, you're given a name, a gender, a role to play. You're taught to see yourself through the eyes of others, to measure your worth through appearance, performance, productivity. But underneath all of that conditioning is something far more expansive. Something that doesn't age, doesn't break, doesn't vanish when your heart stops beating. You are not the character you play in this life. You are the consciousness behind the character, the player behind the screen. Your body is the avatar, a brilliant, complex, beautiful avatar, but an avatar nonetheless. A temporary suit custom, built for this simulation. It's equipped with sensors, your 5 senses, so you can interact with the environment. It's fitted with emotions, hormones, reflexes, and memory, not to limit you, but to immerse you so deeply in the game that you forget it's a game. That's part of the design. That's how the illusion stays intact. But have you ever wondered why you can watch your thoughts, yet not be your thoughts? Why you can feel emotions, but know they're passing through you, not who you are? Why you can close your eyes, sit in stillness, and feel a presence that isn't tied to your age, your name, your history? That's because the real you, the player, is awareness itself, not what's happening on the screen, but what's behind the screen. Now think about the way simulation theory presents it, that this world is not a physical, objective reality, but a highly sophisticated, consciousness-driven simulation, a kind of dream, rendered in real time by your perceptions, your choices, and your frequency. If that's true, and the signs increasingly say that it is, then your body is the in-game character, and your consciousness is the one holding the controller. You didn't begin at birth, you logged in, and just like in a game, your avatar isn't random. It was chosen, designed, calibrated to match the mission you came here to explore. Your background, your appearance, your strengths and flaws, they're not punishments or mistakes. They're data points coded into this version of the experience. And every obstacle you face, every trigger you encounter, every synchronicity you witness, they're all generated in response to you, to where you are in your remembering, to how you're playing the game. In video games, when the player levels up, the game gets harder. Not because it's cruel, but because it's inviting you to use more of your potential. The enemies get smarter, the path gets steeper. But the player inside becomes more awake, more skilled, more conscious of the bigger picture. That's you, and that's what this realm is doing. It's not punishing you, it's giving you the chance to remember who you really are. The problem is, most people think they are their avatar. So when life gets hard, they feel like victims of a cruel world. When their body changes, they feel like they're losing themselves. When others judge them, they crumble under the weight of external perception. But when you remember that you're the player, not the character, everything changes. Pain becomes data, fear becomes signal, failure becomes feedback. You're no longer trying to win the game, you're trying to awaken within it. Think about how the avatar behaves. It's reactive, emotional, sensory. It responds to stimulus, reacts to danger, gets caught in cycles of survival. That's the default programming. But you, consciousness, are the one who can pause the reaction. Observe the pattern. Choose differently. That's how you know you're not the character. Because the character can't watch itself. But you can. Every time you've had a moment of insight, where you saw yourself from a higher vantage point, where you suddenly knew what needed to be done, where you felt something bigger guiding you, that was the player piercing through the game. That was you remembering. Even dreams hint at this. In dreams, your avatar can shift, your identity can change. You might be someone else entirely, in a different body, with a different story, and yet you are still there. The awareness hasn't changed. Only the avatar has. And when you wake up, the dream version of you dissolves, but the one who observed the dream remains. That's closer to your true nature than anything you can touch. Now think of how this impacts your life today. If your body is the avatar, then illness is not a punishment, it's a message. If your emotions are feedback systems, then depression, anxiety, and discontent aren't flaws, they're indicators. The same way a video game gives you warnings, clues, signs, this simulation is always giving you feedback, and when you ignore it, it gets louder. Not to hurt you, but to wake you up. Have you ever experienced moments where you felt outside your body? Moments of dissociation, deep meditation, or even trauma, where you suddenly saw yourself from a distance, where time slowed down or stopped? Those aren't malfunctions. Those are glimpses beyond the avatar, temporary exits from the immersion. Reminders that the real you can't be confined to skin and bone. And if that's true, then death is not the end of anything. It's just the player logging out of this particular realm. It's the game ending, the simulation fading, the character's story reaching its final scene. But the awareness, the player, still fully present, still intact, still watching. So many spiritual traditions speak about this indirectly. The idea of the soul, the higher self, the eternal spirit, it all points to the same truth. You are not the name you were given. You are not the face others recognize. You are not the story you've lived. You are the observer behind it all, the light behind the eyes. And just like in a simulation, everything you see is data. Everything you experience is rendered for your growth. You're not here to survive, you're here to remember. To move from identification with the character to awareness of the player. To go from being trapped in the role to consciously choosing how you play it. When you remember that your body is your avatar, life becomes a training ground. You treat your emotions as tools. You view triggers as teachers. You stop fearing the shadows because you understand they were coded into your journey for a reason. And you no longer compare your avatar to others because you know each one is customized for a different level, a different quest, a different soul mission. This changes how you treat yourself. You begin to listen, not judge. You learn to recalibrate, not punish. You realize your worth has nothing to do with your output, your status, or your appearance. It's not what you're playing that defines you, it's how you play. And the more aware you become, the more the simulation reveals its secrets. Because the game isn't about winning, it's about waking up. And once you do, once you see the body for what it is, a sacred interface, a divine vehicle, you stop fearing death, aging, pain. You stop trying to escape your circumstances and start using them. Because now you know. You're not the avatar stumbling through the dark. You're the player remembering the light you've always carried. What if I told you that death isn't what you think it is? That it's not the black void, not the cruel end, not the extinguishing of your light, but a doorway, a transition, a shifting of vibration. A logout from the level you're currently playing, so you can return to the larger self that was never truly inside the game to begin with. You've been programmed to fear death from the beginning, not by accident, but by design. The fear of death keeps the simulation running. It keeps you small, obedient, distracted. It keeps you clinging to the character, desperate to preserve the avatar at all costs. Because if you believe that death is the end, you'll do anything to avoid it, even at the expense of your truth, your awakening, your purpose. But that fear, is artificial. Deep down, beyond the noise of culture, religion, and trauma, you already know, there is no real ending. You've seen this. In dreams, when you die, you wake up. The moment you fall, crash, or fade away in the dream, there's no eternal darkness. There's an inhale, a blink, a sudden remembering. You were dreaming, you were immersed, you were inside a story, but it wasn't you. And just like that, you open your eyes and realize, it never had the power to destroy you. That's death. Not deletion, not erasure, just waking up into the next layer of yourself. Your consciousness is not made of matter, it's not bound to time, it's not held together by neurons and skin, it is vibrational, energetic, eternal. So when your body stops functioning, your awareness doesn't vanish, it unplugs, it steps out, it transitions from one frequency to another. Just like changing the station on a radio, the music doesn't end, it simply moves to another channel. And yet, most people live as if they'll vanish when their body dies. They chase legacy, they fear aging, they try to immortalize themselves through work, achievement, or memory. But none of that survives. What survives is you, the you that exists before the name, before the body, before the world was rendered around your senses. Death is not a monster waiting at the edge of your life. It's not a punishment for living, it's a return, a reset, a loading screen before the next scene unfolds. If you've ever sat beside someone who passed peacefully, you've seen it. The way their body softens, the way the room shifts, the way the energy changes, almost like something lifted. Because something did lift. The awareness stepped out, not as a ghost, not as a shadow, but as light moving through layers. Think of a video game. When the character dies, the player isn't gone. The game ends, the screen fades, but the player is still holding the controller, still watching, still deciding what to do next. Do they restart? Do they switch levels? Do they choose a new mission? That's you. Death is just the simulation signaling, session complete. The story for that avatar has reached its natural conclusion. But you, the player, you remain intact, whole, undiminished. And here's the part no one tells you. Many souls choose their exit point. Sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously, but always in alignment with their soul's arc. You don't die because you failed. You don't die because you were weak. You die because the chapter ended, because the role served its purpose. Because the body, your temporary interface, could no longer support the frequency you were meant to evolve into. So the player logs out. Not as a tragedy, but as a shift. There are countless documented experiences of people clinically dead for minutes, sometimes hours, who come back with memories, vivid, beautiful, terrifying, liberating, of what lies beyond. They describe feelings of profound peace, weightlessness, clarity, encounters with guides, visions of light, expanses of consciousness beyond words. They don't speak of oblivion. They speak of coming home, of waking up from a dream and remembering the truth. Because that's what death really is, a lifting of the veil, the moment when the filters fall away and you remember who you were all along. You remember the agreements, the soul contracts, the choices, the reasons you came here, the lessons you chose to learn. You see the entire tapestry of your life, not as random suffering, but as a carefully crafted arc of evolution. And then, if you're meant to, you return, or you move on to the next realm. Death is not a punishment, it's not a judgment, it's a graduation, a vibrational shift. The old body, dense, limited, prone to decay, can no longer carry the expanding energy of who you are becoming. So you release it, like taking off a heavy coat in the spring, like letting go of training wheels when you're ready to fly. The tragedy is not in dying. The tragedy is in fearing death so much that you never really live, that you stay in jobs that crush your spirit, that you remain in relationships that drain your energy, that you silence your truth because you think there's all the time in the world. But when you remember that death is not the enemy, something beautiful happens. You stop clinging, and you start creating. You stop hiding, and you start expressing. You stop surviving, and you start living. Because here's the paradox. When you accept that death is just a transition, you become fearless, not reckless, but free. You know this isn't your only shot. You know nothing real can be lost. You know you are more than the body, the name, the story. And with that knowing comes power. The power to walk away from the things that don't serve you. The power to speak truth without trembling. The power to love without chains. Because you no longer live like someone who's trying to preserve a character. You live like someone who remembers they are the player. And just like in dreams, sometimes the death of the character is what wakes the dreamer. There are moments in your life that feel like death, loss, heartbreak, betrayal, the end of who you thought you were. But those moments don't destroy you, they reveal you. They strip away the illusion so you can stand in your essence. That's what death does. Whether it's symbolic or physical, it's never the end. It's the point of remembering. When the loading screen appears, and the lights dim, and the final breath is taken, don't imagine darkness. Imagine light. Imagine a sudden clarity, a lift, a remembering. The weight drops. The name dissolves, and you rise, not as a shadow, not as a copy, but as yourself, unfiltered, expanded, whole. That's the truth hidden behind the fear. That's the knowing buried under lifetimes of programming. And when you reclaim it, everything changes. You stop resisting the passage of time. You stop fearing what's next. And you start asking, what am I here to become before I log out? What am I here to create, to love, to feel, knowing that none of it is wasted, and none of it is forever? Because this life, this body, this avatar, is a precious mission. Not because it's all there is, but because it's a chance to evolve the soul, a chance to awaken inside the dream, a chance to meet death, not as an ending, but as a homecoming. And when that day comes, not if, but when, you won't be afraid. You'll remember, you'll smile, you'll exhale, and you'll step through the veil into the next layer of yourself. What if I told you the reason this world feels strangely familiar is because you've been here before? Not just once, not just in passing, but over and over, looping through lifetimes, exploring different angles, wearing different masks, playing out countless roles in the grand simulation of awakening. That sense of déjà vu you've felt? The places that stir something in you before you've ever stepped foot on them? The people you meet and instantly recognize with no logical reason why? Those aren't coincidences. Those are soul echoes, residual imprints from journeys your conscious mind has forgotten, but your deeper awareness never could. From a young age you may have sensed it, that this world was both new and ancient, that some parts of your life feel orchestrated, destined, like they were already set into motion long before you arrived. And maybe, just maybe, you've wondered why certain patterns keep repeating, why some wounds seem to follow you even when the external circumstances change. It's because you're not experiencing life for the first time. You're experiencing the latest version of a long, unfolding story, not as punishment, not because you failed, but because your soul is evolving, and evolution takes practice. Think of this realm as a cosmic classroom, a simulation where consciousness comes to refine itself through experience. Each life is a module, a level, a training session designed to teach you something your soul hasn't fully mastered yet. Love, patience, courage, forgiveness, surrender. These aren't just ideals, they're frequencies. Lessons, codes you're here to unlock through living them. But how do you master something eternal in a single lifetime? You don't. That's why you return. Reincarnation isn't a religious theory, it's a natural function of soul mechanics. Just like a video game restarts when the mission isn't complete, your soul re-enters the simulation to continue the journey. Not because you failed, but because you're still remembering, still refining, still realigning with your source. And here's the part that changes everything. You're not being recycled randomly. Each lifetime is carefully selected. The conditions, the parents, the body, the geography, these aren't random variables. They are parameters chosen by your higher self to create the exact set of conditions needed for your next step in growth. That inexplicable pull toward a certain culture, a certain era, a certain art form. It's not a whim, it's a breadcrumb. A whisper from your past lives bleeding into this one. Have you ever met someone and felt like you've known them forever? A connection so deep, so instant, that it bypasses logic and lands straight in your chest. That's not imagination, that's memory. Soul memory. You've crossed paths before, played roles in each other's lives, been parent and child, friend and enemy, lover and guide. You've felt their presence in another time, another place, and in this life, the recognition returns like a magnetic pull across dimensions. And then there's déjà vu, those strange flashes when the present feels like a rerun, when you walk into a place for the first time but feel like you've been there before. When a conversation unfolds word for word, and you know what's coming next. These aren't glitches, they're bleed-throughs, pockets of memory pushing through the veil between timelines, moments where the soul's greater awareness peeks through the illusion of linear time. Because time isn't linear, that's just the format of this level. From your soul's vantage point, all lifetimes are happening simultaneously, each feeding into the next, each informing the others. You're not just the person you are today. You are the sum total of every version you've ever been, and each version is still echoing inside you. This is why some fears don't make sense. Why you might have a deep phobia of water, fire, heights, tight spaces, without any traumatic event in this life to justify it. It's because the imprint comes from somewhere deeper. A past version of you lived through something powerful, and the energy of that experience stayed with you, waiting to be acknowledged, healed, and transmuted. This is also why some skills feel effortless, why you pick up an instrument and feel like you've played it for centuries, why languages come naturally, why you're drawn to certain philosophies, rituals, or symbols that you've never studied. It's not new information, it's retrieval. You're not learning, you're remembering. And every life you live feeds back into the greater soul. Every triumph, every heartbreak, every quiet act of kindness, it all becomes part of the tapestry. You're not just here to survive. You're here to integrate, to harvest wisdom from experience, to move closer to the essence of who you truly are underneath the veil of form. Think of it like this. If your soul is the player, each life is a different avatar. You've played many characters, different genders, races, beliefs, roles. Sometimes the hero, sometimes the villain. Because from the soul's perspective, it's not about good or bad, it's about expansion, it's about experiencing all of it, the full range of human consciousness, so you can return home carrying a deeper knowing. And the most beautiful part? You're never alone in it. You reincarnate with soul groups, beings you've traveled with across lifetimes. Some of them are here with you now. That friend who always feels like family. That teacher who shows up right when you're about to fall. That stranger who looks you in the eyes and stirs something ancient in you. These aren't chance meetings, they're reunions. Chosen encounters woven into the design of your current life to remind you, you've done this before, and you chose to do it again. You may wonder why you can't remember all your past lives, why the slate is wiped clean at birth. But consider this. If you carried every memory from every incarnation, how could you focus on this one? How could you fully immerse yourself in the role? The veil is a mercy, a necessary forgetting, so that you can engage with this level of the simulation authentically. But the echoes are still there, in your intuition, your dreams, your emotions. And as your consciousness expands, so does your access. You begin to feel the past, not as nostalgia, but as energy. You begin to see patterns, not as coincidence, but as soul curriculum. This is why some people awaken with such intensity, why spiritual remembrance sometimes arrives in waves, triggered by meditation, trauma, or deep inner work. It's the soul rising to the surface. The player whispering through the character, "You've done this before. You're not lost. You're on track." And if you're looping, it's not because you're stuck. It's because your soul loves you enough to keep refining the lesson until you no longer need the mirror, until you no longer react the same way to the same stimulus, until you evolve from unconscious pattern to conscious creation. So when life feels repetitive, when the same wounds reopen, when the same choices return in different disguises, don't despair. Recognize the loop. Recognize the opportunity. Each loop is a spiral, not a circle. You're not in the same place, you're returning to the same lesson at a higher level of consciousness. That's progress. That's mastery. You've been here before, but never quite like this, because this version of you is carrying everything the others have learned. And maybe, just maybe, this is the life where you remember it all. What if I told you that nothing in your life has ever been random? that every event, every meeting, every setback, every whisper of déjà vu and every moment of awe has been part of a far more intelligent design than you've been led to believe. Not because you're being manipulated, but because you're being guided. Because life is not chaos in motion, it is consciousness in disguise. And the evidence has always been in front of you, you've just called it coincidence. Look closer. Think about how often a certain number seems to follow you, showing up on clocks, receipts, license plates, addresses. Think about how you think of someone, and they text you within moments. How you feel the need to go somewhere, only to bump into the one person who changes everything. How, just as you're asking a question in your mind, a song, a stranger's phrase, or a book answers you directly, sometimes within seconds. These moments aren't glitches, they're signals. Confirmations. Breadcrumbs on a trail your higher self is laying out for you, in plain sight. These are synchronicities, not luck, not chance, but alignment. They are the echoes of your vibration reflected in the fabric of your reality. When you're in tune, when your internal state begins to match your soul's intention, the external world begins to speak. It rearranges itself to mirror your consciousness, like a dream that bends in response to the dreamer's emotions. The more awake you become, the more you notice the patterns. And the more you notice, the less you can deny. You are not walking through a dead world. You are dancing with a living mirror. Life is structured through themes. You've probably noticed them. That your relationships, your careers, your moments of crisis often carry the same emotional thread. You may keep encountering abandonment, betrayal, unworthiness, or fear of loss. You may keep finding yourself in situations where your voice is silenced, your needs ignored, your truth compromised. But those aren't punishments, they're patterns, not to trap you, but to awaken you. Because until you see the pattern, you can't rise above it. Everything repeats until it is seen clearly, until you no longer react the way the old version of you once did, until you finally respond with awareness, not habit, until the lesson becomes wisdom. That's the beauty and brilliance of the design. It doesn't punish you for missing the message. It lovingly loops the message until you're ready to receive it, until you've grown beyond it, until you can look at the pattern and say, I see you, I get it, I'm ready now. These cycles are not random occurrences in an indifferent universe. They are vibrational feedback mechanisms. Your soul emits a certain frequency. Your thoughts, beliefs, and emotional state amplify it. And the universe responds by arranging people, events, and outcomes that reflect that frequency back to you. So if you're radiating fear, you'll see more things that affirm your fear. If you're holding resentment, life will echo that with more situations to resent. But when you shift your internal field, when you start embodying love, peace, purpose, the patterns change. The mirror updates, and the world starts to open in ways that once seemed impossible. It's not about forcing the external, it's about shifting the internal. Because everything in your outer world is a projection of your inner state. And the more aligned you become with your higher self, the more life begins to feel guided, scripted, full of hidden meaning waiting to be decoded. You've likely noticed certain numbers, 11, 11, 222, 333. They seem to appear when you're thinking about a major decision, when you're doubting your path, or when you're on the brink of something new. These are not just angel numbers as the internet calls them, they are energetic timestamps, synchronistic nudges from the greater field of awareness that you're on track, that the simulation is responding, that you're seen. Not by some being outside you, but by the greater intelligence that is you, reaching across dimensions to guide the version of you playing the game. Symbols behave this way too. You'll keep seeing the same animal, the same word, the same shape. They show up in dreams, in art, in people's clothing, in unexpected places. They're not random. They're part of your personal language with the universe. A language that becomes clearer the more you pay attention. And the moment you stop brushing them off as meaningless, you begin to hear the deeper message underneath it all. You're not lost. You're not forgotten. You're in a dialogue with creation itself. Even the people you attract follow patterns. If you keep drawing in the same kind of partner, the same kind of boss, the same kind of friend who wounds you in the same kind of way, that's not bad luck. That's a mirror. It's the simulation reflecting a subconscious belief that you're ready to finally heal. You're not being tested. You're being shown what still lives within you, what still needs integration, what still shapes your frequency behind the scenes. And once you begin to see it for what it is, not a trap, but a tool, you gain access to the controls. You start seeing your reality like code, a responsive field that reconfigures itself as soon as your internal software upgrades. You start speaking to life in symbols and signs. You start trusting the flow of your intuition, because you realize it was never random instinct, it was your soul whispering through your nervous system. Even pain follows patterns, and though no one wants to suffer, pain is often the loudest pattern breaker. It's the force that snaps you out of autopilot, that cracks the illusion wide open, that pulls the rug out, not to punish, but to realign you with the truth you've forgotten. You lose what you thought you needed, only to discover what you really are. You fall apart, only to realize the person you were clinging to was never the real you. And just when it seems like everything is ending, something greater begins. That's not a coincidence, that's design. And the more conscious you become, the more rapidly these patterns will show up, because the simulation knows you're paying attention now. It stops whispering and starts speaking, loudly, directly, sometimes even dramatically. Because the moment you say, "I'm ready to remember," life says, "Then watch this." The patterns are the proof. You don't need to wait for some divine being to appear in the sky. You don't need to chase signs outside of yourself. The signs are already here. In the people you meet, in the loops you're stuck in the dreams that won't leave you, in the memories that keep resurfacing. They are all invitations to see deeper, to notice the symmetry, to witness the unseen intelligence working behind the veil. Because when you see the patterns, you begin to see the plan. When you trace the cycles, you begin to understand the soul's curriculum. And when you accept that nothing is random, you stop being a victim, and you start being a conscious creator. You were never abandoned here. You're not wandering through meaningless chaos. You're walking a coded path laid out by your own higher self. Every twist, every turn, every loop, it's all there to guide you home to who you've always been underneath the forgetting. The proof is in the patterns. And now, you're finally starting to see them. What if I told you that everything happening in your life right now, every emotion, every challenge, every so-called coincidence, is not random or meaningless, but feedback, not judgment, not punishment, not the universe scolding you for mistakes, but a perfectly tuned system of energetic mirrors, reflecting the vibration you're sending out, guiding you back into alignment with your higher self. Because this realm isn't here to condemn you, it's here to refine you. You've probably heard the word karma tossed around, often misunderstood as a cosmic punishment or moral scoreboard. But karma is not revenge, it's resonance. It's not about doing something bad and being punished later by some external force. Karma is simply the echo of your own frequency, the return of energy you've projected, wrapped in a different form so you can see it, feel it, learn from it, transmute it. Not as retribution, but as reflection. This world you live in, what you call reality, is a dynamic interface. It is not solid, not fixed, and certainly not passive. It's intelligent, it's responsive. It listens to what you believe, what you expect, and what you broadcast energetically. And then it reflects that signal back to you through people, circumstances, outcomes, and emotions. Not because it's trying to hurt you, but because it's trying to show you where you are. Every thought you think has a frequency. Every emotion you hold radiates into the field. Every intention, conscious or unconscious, becomes a message that the universe answers. And most of the time, you don't realize what you're broadcasting until the feedback shows up, until the relationship falls apart, until the opportunity slips through your fingers, until the same struggle repeats itself again, and you ask, why is this happening to me? But the question you're really being invited to ask is, what is this showing me? Because nothing is here to punish you. This realm doesn't operate on punishment, it operates on resonance. If you're in fear, you attract more experiences that confirm that fear. If you're rooted in lack, you meet more situations that mirror scarcity. If you secretly believe you're not enough, the world keeps handing you evidence to validate that belief. Not because it's true, but because you haven't chosen to see something higher yet. It's a feedback system, not a sentence. And once you begin to understand that, your entire relationship with life changes. You stop taking things personally, and you start reading the signs. You stop blaming others for your pain, and you start tracing the source of the signal. You stop reacting to the surface of things, and you start listening to the frequency underneath them. Imagine a tuning fork. Strike one, and another begins to vibrate in resonance. That's how karma works. That's how reality works. You send out a vibration, and life responds in kind. Sometimes instantly. Sometimes with delay. But always with precision. The law doesn't fail. It doesn't skip anyone. And it's not driven by morality, it's driven by energy. You're not being asked to be good so that life treats you well. You're being asked to become coherent, to bring your inner world into alignment with the truth of who you really are. The more aligned you are, the clearer the feedback becomes. Not necessarily easier, but clearer. You start to notice when a thought feels off, when a decision isn't in integrity, when an action is misaligned with your values. You don't need the external world to crash in order to get the message, because your inner compass becomes more finely tuned. That's spiritual maturity, that's growth, that's mastery. But until then, the feedback will escalate. Not as a threat, but as a call. At first, it's a whisper, a feeling of restlessness, disconnection, discomfort. Then it becomes louder, miscommunications, missed opportunities, breakdowns in relationships. And if still ignored, it becomes louder still, illness, crisis, loss. Not because the universe wants to hurt you, but because it's doing everything it can to wake you up, to bring your attention to the places where you're still living in contradiction with your soul's truth. The system never wants to destroy you, it wants to align you, but alignment requires awareness, and awareness often requires disruption. That's why some of your most painful moments were also your most transformative, because the breakdown forced you to reevaluate, to recalibrate, to go inward. Pain became the portal. The discomfort became the signal that you were living in a way that no longer served your evolution. And if you look back, you'll see the patterns. You'll see how your actions, even the unconscious ones, set things into motion. You'll see how your beliefs shaped your perception. How your emotional state magnetized certain people into your life, not because they were fated to hurt you, but because they were coded to show you what still needed healing. And every time you integrated a lesson, changed a belief, or raised your vibration, the external world followed. The feedback shifted. That's not a coincidence. That's how this realm works. Even your desires are part of the feedback loop. When you want something deeply, life begins adjusting to match your frequency. But it doesn't just deliver what you ask for, it delivers the path to becoming someone who can receive it. That path often includes challenges, lessons, and initiations you didn't expect. Not to deny your desire, but to refine you into alignment with it. Your desire is not just a request, it's a transformation process. And the feedback you receive along the way is there to sculpt you into the version of yourself who can hold what you're asking for. The mistake most people make is believing that unwanted experiences mean they're failing, that they're cursed, that life is out to get them. But what if the opposite is true? What if those experiences are evidence that the system is still listening, still responding, still offering you exactly what you need to break free of your current vibration and step into the next layer of truth? That doesn't mean you asked for suffering. It means the path to remembrance requires friction. Just like fire refines gold, the soul is refined through the sacred friction of life. Through the trial and error of thought, action, and consequence. Through the gentle, and sometimes not so gentle, echo of your own energy reflected back to you. So instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" begin asking, "What is this teaching me?" Instead of resisting the feedback, study it, trace it, feel it, let it guide you. Every relationship, every job, every moment of ease or struggle is part of your curriculum. Not to define you, but to evolve you. The soul is not here to be perfect. It's here to become aware, to move from unconscious creation to conscious creation. And this world, with all its chaos and symmetry, all its pain and beauty, is the perfect arena for that growth. You don't need to fear karma. You don't need to outrun your past. You simply need to become present with your energy now. Because this moment is where all feedback originates. This breath, this choice, this vibration, right here. And the more present you become, the more quickly you notice the loops, the more compassionately you correct the signal, the more gracefully you move through the unfolding. You become the alchemist. Not because you control the system, but because you understand it. You play with clarity, with reverence, with vision. This realm isn't your prison. It's your echo chamber, your sacred mirror, your vibrational sculptor. It gives you exactly what you need, no more, no less, to become who you were always meant to be. What if I told you the veil that separates you from your greater truth was never meant to be permanent, that the sense of disconnection you feel, the illusion that you're alone, cut off from the divine, wandering in a world that doesn't remember you, is part of a carefully constructed experience designed not to imprison you, but to awaken you? Because the veil wasn't meant to trap you, it was meant to test you. To give you the opportunity to see beyond form, to remember who and what you truly are, not because you were told, but because you discovered it for yourself. From the moment you entered this world, a forgetting took place. Not because you were unworthy of truth, but because the forgetting is the game. The amnesia is sacred. It gives meaning to the remembering. If you knew, from the beginning, exactly where you came from and why you were here, you wouldn't truly explore. You wouldn't search, stretch, question, or ache in the ways that only this kind of life can provoke. You wouldn't learn to feel your way back to the truth. You'd simply know it intellectually. And that's not the same, not even close. You chose to come into a reality that operates on contrast. Darkness and light, silence and sound, density and expansion. You chose to wear a body with limits, to move through time, to navigate cause and effect, to experience separation, not because it's real, but because it's useful. Because in the illusion of separation, you get to remember the light of connection by your own effort, your own resonance, your own longing. The veil gives you the gift of choosing to remember, and choice is the highest expression of consciousness. But here's the secret they never taught you. The veil was always meant to be temporary. It was meant to be thin, permeable, and throughout your life you've already glimpsed what lies beyond it. In the moments between sleep and waking, when time dissolves and you feel yourself floating, when a dream pulls you so deeply into another world that waking up feels like the real disconnection. In those rare moments of silence, during meditation or prayer, when your mind stills and your awareness stretches out past your body into something vast, intimate, and strangely familiar. In the moments of flow, or surrender, or heartbreak so profound that it shatters the normal rhythm of your thoughts, and something other moves through you. These are the cracks in the veil. Not accidents, not flukes, not hallucinations, but designed moments, built into the system itself, where you are invited to see the truth behind the illusion. They don't force themselves upon you. They wait for your readiness. They respond to your curiosity. They meet you halfway, when you dare to look beyond what the senses tell you is real. There are tools, ancient and modern, that help peel back the veil even further. Breathwork, plant medicine, deep trance states, conscious dreaming, prolonged fasting, ritual. These are not shortcuts or escapes. They're technologies of consciousness, ways to temporarily lift the curtain and let the soul peek through. Not so you can run from this world, but so you can remember that this world is not all there is. And when you return, you carry with you a resonance, a knowing that changes how you move through the simulation forever. For some, it happens spontaneously, a near-death experience, a moment of profound grief, or an overwhelming sense of oneness that descends without warning. In that instant, everything dissolves. The body becomes transparent, the mind becomes still, and what remains is awareness, vast, eternal, and unmistakably real. Those who've touched it will never be the same again. Because once you've seen behind the veil, you can't unsee. You may forget again, you may get pulled back into the game, but the truth lingers, and it calls you home. The veil is not a wall, it's a filter, a dimming of your senses, a tuning of your awareness to a narrow band of frequency, like a radio station playing one particular song, but other stations exist. Other songs are playing, right now, all around you, and through practice, intention, and surrender, you can begin to shift the dial. You can begin to perceive what lies just beyond the edges of ordinary perception. And when you do, the illusion begins to crack, not violently, but gently, lovingly, like waking up from a dream that once felt so convincing, but now seems hazy and distant. You begin to realize that the people in your life are not strangers, they are players too. Souls behind masks, just like you, pretending to forget so they can remember together. You begin to sense that every object, every space, every breeze and flicker of light has a kind of aliveness to it, a presence, because nothing is actually separate. Not your thoughts, not your body, not the stars in the sky. It's all entangled in one field of intelligence, playing hide and seek with itself. You are not apart from it. You are it, experiencing itself in a form so convincing, you almost believed you were small. The veil makes the play possible. But it also invites you to graduate, not by escaping this life, but by seeing through it while still fully inside it. By walking in both worlds, aware of the dream, yet engaged in it, awake, but not withdrawn, present, but not deceived. That's the mastery. That's what the mystics meant when they said to be in the world, but not of it. To participate fully in the story, while never forgetting that you are the storyteller too. And this is not some rare gift reserved for the few. It's your birthright. You came into this life with the tools to pierce the illusion. Your body, your breath, your emotions, your dreams, they are all keys. And the more you trust the signals, the more the veil begins to thin. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in layers, in moments, in glimpses that begin to string together into a new way of seeing. You don't have to retreat to a monastery or abandon your life to begin lifting the veil. You only have to become present, curious, willing to question what you've been told is real, willing to feel into the spaces between thoughts, into the stillness beneath the noise, willing to listen when something inside you whispers, "There's more than this," because there is. And you've already known it. You've touched it in dreams. You've felt it in silence. You've glimpsed it in synchronicities, so precise they left you breathless. Those moments are not just anomalies, they are breadcrumbs. They are the veil calling you closer, inviting you to remember that this world, as vivid and intense as it feels, is not the whole picture. It is one layer in a vast, multidimensional spectrum of being, and you are not limited to this frequency. You never were. The illusion of separation was meant to be broken, not by force, but by awareness. Not through fear, but through love, because love is the energy that collapses the illusion. Love reveals the unity beneath the form. And the more you love, not as sentiment, but as seeing clearly, the thinner the veil becomes. You are not here to stay asleep. You are here to awaken inside the dream, to look around and realize, with calm clarity, this is not all there is. And in that knowing, something shifts. The fear begins to fade. The need to control loosens its grip. And what emerges is presence, power, peace. Because you finally remember, the veil was never meant to blind you. It was meant to show you how powerful your light truly is. What if I told you that the so-called afterlife, the space you've been taught to imagine as unknowable, unreachable, or strictly the domain of mystics, has already been studied, documented, and mapped, not just by spiritual seekers, but by scientists, and not in metaphor, not in myth, but in the language of data, experience, and repeatable exploration? There is a hidden archive of research, built quietly over decades, that reveals you aren't walking blind in this world. You're immersed in a multi-layered reality far more complex than you've been led to believe. And the veil between this world and the next? It's not as thick as they told you. You see, the narrative we've been given says that science deals with the physical, and spirituality belongs to the realm of belief. That consciousness is a side effect of the brain, that there is nothing beyond the body, that when you die, the lights go out and that's the end. But what if some scientists never accepted that? What if they asked the forbidden questions, the ones that mainstream institutions wouldn't dare entertain? What is consciousness really? Where does it go when the body sleeps or dies? What lies beyond the edges of waking life? And what if they found answers that challenge every assumption about who you are and what this life is? Thomas Campbell was one such scientist. He didn't begin as a mystic or philosopher. He began as a physicist, a problem solver, a consciousness explorer working on advanced defense systems while quietly devoting his life to exploring altered states of awareness. But unlike the academic elite who dismissed the subjective as unmeasurable, Campbell took a different path. He tested it, repeatedly, with clarity, precision, and deep curiosity. He didn't want to believe, he wanted to know, and he discovered that consciousness exists independent of the body. That you can leave the physical behind and access other layers of reality, non-physical dimensions governed not by space and time, but by vibration, intention, and information. He called it my big toe theory of everything, not as a gimmick, but because what he found transcended both physics and metaphysics. His work showed that reality behaves like a digital information system, a simulation, yes, but one designed for consciousness to evolve itself, and this evolution doesn't end at death. In fact, physical death is just a transition point, a shift from one bandwidth of experience to another. But Campbell wasn't alone. Robert Monroe walked a similar path, though his beginnings were even more unlikely. He was a successful radio executive, grounded, practical, skeptical, until a series of out-of-body experiences shattered his worldview. Night after night, he found himself separating from his body, moving through realms that defied every known law of the physical world. He didn't seek these experiences, they found him. And instead of brushing them off as dreams or delusions, he studied them. He wrote down everything. He began to notice patterns. And what emerged was a map, one of the most detailed ever recorded, of the non-physical dimensions you now refer to as the other side. Monroe didn't stop with personal exploration. He founded an institute, a facility dedicated to the scientific study of altered states of consciousness. The Monroe Institute, hidden in the hills of Virginia, became a modern mystery school. But instead of robes and rituals, it used sound technology, precisely calibrated frequencies that altered brainwaves and opened gateways into other dimensions. These weren't fantasy trips. They were structured, trackable experiences. Participants were trained to navigate non-physical realms with clarity and intention, reporting back with uncanny consistency. Different people, different backgrounds, same descriptions, same landscapes, same entities, same layers of existence. They found what Monroe labeled focus levels, states of consciousness beyond waking life. In Focus 10, the body sleeps while the mind remains awake. In Focus 21 and beyond, explorers moved through realms inhabited by other intelligences, guides, lost souls, higher aspects of self. And in the deepest levels, they reached what Monroe called the Park, a transitional realm for souls crossing over after death, a gathering place, a healing station, a way station before reincarnation. Not imagined, but experienced again and again by hundreds of explorers with no knowledge of one another's journeys. What does that mean for you? It means the veil isn't just thin, it's charted. It means you're not waiting for death to discover what's on the other side. You're already entangled with it. Every dream that feels more real than real, every moment of timelessness in meditation, every intuitive hit that bypasses logic and lands in your gut with absolute knowing. These aren't anomalies, they're fragments of a multi-dimensional operating system, one that science, real science, has already begun to uncover. Of course, these findings challenge the foundations of materialist thinking, a worldview that insists only what can be weighed and measured is real. But what if the instruments we use are the limitation, not the phenomena themselves? You don't measure love with a ruler. You don't weigh intuition. You don't chart the sacred with a spreadsheet. But that doesn't make them less real. It just means reality is bigger than the tools we've used to measure it. Campbell, Monroe, and countless others dared to say what academia wouldn't, that consciousness does not emerge from matter, it precedes it, that you are not your brain, that the body is an interface, like a keyboard or headset, in a virtual simulation. When it breaks, you don't die, you disconnect, you reorient, you remember. The work at Monroe Institute didn't just document the afterlife, it trained people to explore it consciously, to go beyond dreams, beyond hallucination, into controlled, intentional states of out-of-body awareness. They trained doctors, engineers, psychologists, and even military personnel. Many entered as skeptics. Most left changed. Because once you feel yourself separate from your body, look back, and realize you're still you, not a theory, not a belief, but a direct knowing. You never see the world the same way again. And while mainstream science dismissed this work for decades, recent developments in quantum physics, neuroplasticity, and consciousness research are starting to catch up. They're beginning to admit that the old model, consciousness as a byproduct of brain chemistry, is full of holes. The evidence is mounting: near-death experiences, terminal lucidity, verifiable out-of-body perceptions. The data doesn't lie. It only waits for those willing to listen. You've been taught to fear death, to treat it as the great unknown, but those who've ventured beyond it, and returned, say otherwise. They say consciousness expands, not ends. That the next realm is not a heaven or hell, it's a reflection of your state of being, a continuation of your learning, a vibrational domain tuned to your soul's frequency, and you don't have to wait until your last breath to touch it. You can begin now. You already have. Every time you close your eyes and feel something greater, every time you dream of loved ones who've passed, every time you receive guidance that comes from nowhere yet resonates like truth. That's the veil parting. That's the science of spirit at work. And the most powerful truth of all? You don't need to take anyone's word for it. You can test it, explore it, feel it, just like those pioneers did. The map is there. The path is open. The tools exist. And once you begin, you'll see what they saw, that this reality is just one layer, one experience among infinite others, and that consciousness, your consciousness, is not bound by time, space, or death. You are far more than a brain in a body. You are awareness itself. And the frontier of science is just beginning to catch up with what your soul has always known. What if I told you that you chose this life before it ever began? That none of this is random. Not your family, not your body, not the timing of your birth, or even the deepest challenges you've faced. What if you signed up for this exact experience, down to the lessons, the losses, the moments of grace, and even the times you felt abandoned by the very source you came from? Because the truth is, you're not here by accident. You volunteered. Long before you arrived in this body, before your first breath, you existed in a field of pure awareness. Not as a name, not as an identity, but as a stream of consciousness, intelligent, timeless, and whole. In that state, there was no fear, no doubt, no confusion. You knew exactly who you were. You were part of something vast, deeply loving, and intricately woven. And from that state of knowing, you looked upon Earth, not as a punishment, but as an opportunity. A school, a testing ground. A place where souls come to remember truth in a realm designed to make them forget. You saw your potential life not as a linear script, but as a set of probabilities, a weaving of relationships, themes, and milestones that would offer you the exact experiences needed to expand your consciousness. You chose your body like an astronaut chooses a suit built for the terrain you were about to enter. You chose your wounds, not because you wanted to suffer, but because you wanted to overcome. You chose certain souls to walk beside you, some to love you, others to challenge you, because each would serve as a mirror, reflecting back pieces of yourself that needed healing, remembering, or release. And, most astonishing of all, you agreed to forget. To step into this life with the veil drawn tight, to experience the amnesia that comes with incarnation. Because that forgetfulness is not a flaw, it's sacred. It's part of the design. It's what makes this realm so potent for growth. Anyone can remember truth when they're surrounded by light. But to remember it in darkness, that takes strength. That takes soul maturity. That takes courage. So you came here. You dropped into a body, into time, into form. And somewhere along the way, you began to forget. The soul memory faded. The contracts blurred. You started to believe the illusion that you were separate, alone, unloved, unworthy. But the illusion was never meant to define you. It was meant to reveal you, to show you what you are not, so you could finally remember what you are. Have you ever wondered why certain moments in your life feel so strangely fated? Why some people feel familiar upon meeting, as if you've known them forever? Why specific struggles repeat themselves with uncanny precision, almost like a teacher returning to see if you've finally learned the lesson? These are not random. These are echoes of your soul agreements, reminders of what you came here to face, to transmute, to rise above. And when you start to listen, not with logic, but with intuition, you begin to hear the subtle call of your own design. Soul contracts are not chains. They are blueprints. They outline the kinds of experiences your soul wants to navigate in this lifetime, not to bind you, but to empower you. They include themes like abandonment, betrayal, forgiveness, authenticity, or power, not because you're being punished, but because your soul is ready to master them, ready to embody a higher level of awareness through the act of living them out. Contracts are flexible, not fixed. You always have free will, but the themes will return until they're met with consciousness. Until you wake up inside the experience and say, I remember why I chose this. This doesn't mean everything that happens is fair or justified. It means that even the most painful chapters have the potential to birth clarity, purpose, and transformation. It means that your suffering is not the end of the story, it's the initiation. And the moment you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to awaken in me? The contract begins to unfold. The lesson reveals itself. The energy begins to shift. The truth is, you are not a victim of circumstance. You are a soul playing out a sacred curriculum in real time. The hard part is, you agreed not to remember that right away. You agreed to experience doubt, separation, fear, so you could alchemize those states into trust, connection, and love. You agreed to walk through fire, not to burn, but to forge something eternal. And yet, your soul has never forgotten. Even when you feel most lost, most confused, most disconnected, the deeper part of you remembers. It sends you signs. It whispers through intuition, déjà vu, gut feelings, and synchronicities. It nudges you toward people, places, and paths that align with your original intention. And when you stray too far, it doesn't punish you. It reorients you, through discomfort, through longing, through the sacred ache that reminds you, this isn't who you are. Some people come into this life with a strong sense of purpose early on. Others wander, drift, or rebel against it. Neither path is better. Some of the most powerful awakenings come after years of resistance. Because what matters most is not when you remember, but that you remember. That you begin to see your life not as a random string of events, but as a meaningful, deliberate evolution of soul. And no, you didn't come here to be perfect. You came to be authentic, to explore, to create, to forget, to remember, to fall and rise and fall again. You came to move through the density of this realm, not to be crushed by it, but to infuse it with light. Your light. The unique frequency of awareness that only you can bring. That's why your path looks different. That's why your timing doesn't match anyone else's. You're not late. You're not broken. You're simply unfolding exactly as you planned. Layer by layer, memory by memory. It's easy to feel trapped in this world. The gravity of physicality, the weight of responsibility, the repetition of daily life can feel like a prison. But when you remember that you chose to come here, everything begins to shift. You reclaim your power. You stop waiting to be rescued and start listening to the voice within, the one that's been guiding you all along. You start walking with more presence, more trust, more alignment, because you're no longer reacting to life, you're responding to your own soul's design. And no matter how far you feel from that design, it's never too late to reconnect. One moment of sincere presence can realign you. One breath, one decision, one act of courage. You don't have to unravel the whole mystery at once. You just have to remember that you are not trapped in this life. You volunteered for it. And that alone makes you braver than you realize. So the next time life feels too heavy to bear, ask yourself, not from your mind, but from your soul, why did I choose this? Then listen. And don't be surprised if the answer isn't in words, but in a shift, a softening, a sudden clarity that reminds you, oh yes, I remember now. What if I told you that the moment you start to see through the illusion, the entire simulation begins to shift? That reality, as fixed and unchangeable as it once seemed, starts bending to your awareness the second you stop moving through it blindly. Now that you've been shown the mechanics behind this realm, now that you understand you are not the character but the one animating it, what will you do with that knowing? Because this is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new chapter, one that only unfolds when you take conscious ownership of your existence. This is the point where you stop surviving and start creating. You are no longer a passenger on a ride that was designed for you. You're the one steering the direction, everything you've explored, reality as a dream, the body as an avatar, death as transition, the soul's journey across lifetimes, has led to this final realization. The simulation is not real until you believe it is, and it's not flexible until you awaken within it. Your awakening is not just a spiritual milestone, it's a switch that flips the entire game board. And now that you've flipped it, the real question becomes, what now? What will you do with the fact that reality responds to your frequency, not your words? That your life mirrors your beliefs, your emotional tone, your assumptions, not your desires alone? That everything from your relationships to your health, your purpose to your inner peace, isn't waiting to be handed to you, it's waiting to be recognized as already within you? Because the simulation is just that, a reflective field, a projection of your inner landscape. It cannot show you anything that you're not willing to see within yourself first. It doesn't move until you move. It doesn't change until you shift from within. So, if you continue to live in reaction, in default programming, in fear or numbness or routine, then the simulation will match that energy. It will loop, recycle, repeat. Not to punish you, but to give you another chance to wake up. But now you know. You've remembered enough to stop blaming the outer world and start recalibrating the inner one. That's where the transformation begins. Not in forcing change, but in becoming the version of yourself that is no longer waiting. The version that sees the whole setup for what it is, a beautifully complex feedback system responding not to effort, but to embodiment. The moment you live as if you are already free, already powerful, already divine, the world shifts around you like a dream, responding to the dreamer. This is not about faking it, it's not about pretending you're enlightened, it's about aligning your state of being with what your soul already knows to be true. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to earn your worth or justify your awakening. You only need to trust the signal coming from within, the feeling of resonance when something is real, even if it's invisible, the peace that follows surrender, the pull toward authenticity that becomes unbearable to ignore. So how do you live in the simulation now that you see it for what it is? You live deliberately. You stop sleepwalking. You stop playing small. You stop playing for the outside world to validate your existence. You start showing up every day as if your energy is the blueprint of what's to come, because it is. You start treating your thoughts like architecture, your emotions like navigational tools, and your intuition like sacred GPS. You start listening, not to the noise of the world, but to the stillness behind it. That's where the code is rewritten, and when challenges arise, as they will, you don't collapse into victimhood. You ask the higher question, what is this showing me about my frequency, about where I'm still asleep, where I'm still holding on to something that doesn't align with who I'm becoming? The simulation uses friction not to crush you, but to reveal you, to refine the signal, to sharpen your awareness. So you stop cursing the obstacle and start mining it for information. What part of me created this? What version of me still believes I need this kind of lesson to evolve? The more conscious you become, the faster the feedback loop. The game speeds up. You think a thought, and suddenly it's on your doorstep. You carry resentment, and it shows up in your body. You shift into gratitude, and synchronicities unfold like a domino chain. You begin to notice that time isn't fixed. That energy collapses into form faster than logic would allow. That the moment you feel something as true, it starts rearranging the field around you. That's the level you're playing at now. But with that power comes responsibility. No more pretending you didn't know. No more outsourcing your intuition to others. No more waiting for signs while ignoring the ones already screaming through your reality. You've been initiated. And while the world around you may still operate under the illusion of separation, you no longer have to. You can move through it as one who remembers, one who sees through the script and still chooses to play, not for escape, but for evolution. And what does evolution look like in this context? It looks like living each moment as a conscious act, choosing alignment over approval, truth over comfort, embodiment over performance. It looks like trusting that your path is not meant to look like anyone else's because your soul didn't come here for repetition, it came for expansion. It came to explore what only you could bring into this dimension. You're not here to wake up and then hide. You're not here to understand the matrix just to survive inside of it. You're here to walk through it, awake. To remember that this is the dream, and to shape it with the awareness that you are both inside it and beyond it. That dual awareness is your superpower. You are the actor and the author, the experiencer and the observer. And the more you embrace both, the more fluid reality becomes. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that awakening makes life easier. It doesn't. It makes it clearer. It burns away the illusions that once kept you safe, and sometimes that leaves you raw, exposed, uncertain. But clarity is a gift, even when it's uncomfortable. It puts the pen back in your hand. It returns authority to your own consciousness. And when you operate from that level, when you realize that life responds to who you are, not just what you do, then even the chaos begins to serve you. So what now that you know? You stop waiting, you stop hoping, you decide who you are, and you live it with every breath, not to impress, not to ascend, but to embody. Because the simulation doesn't respond to performance, it responds to authenticity. It calibrates to your internal state. And the moment you shift from asking, "When will it happen for me?" to declaring, "It is me," the simulation reconfigures. New doors open, old patterns dissolve, and the path becomes visible, step by step, as you walk it. Not because someone gave you permission, but because you remembered, you were the architect all along. What if I told you that the moment you start to see through the illusion, the entire simulation begins to shift? That reality, as fixed and unchangeable as it once seemed, starts bending to your awareness the second you stop moving through it blindly. Now that you've been shown the mechanics behind this realm, now that you understand you are not the character but the one animating it, what will you do with that knowing? Because this is not the end of the story, it's the beginning of a new chapter, one that only unfolds when you take conscious ownership of your existence. This is the point where you stop surviving and start creating. You are no longer a passenger on a ride that was designed for you. You're the one steering the direction. Everything you've explored, reality as a dream, the body as an avatar, death as transition, the soul's journey across lifetimes, has led to this final realization. The simulation is not real until you believe it is, and it's not flexible until you awaken within it. Your awakening is not just a spiritual milestone, it's a switch that flips the entire game board. And now that you've flipped it, the real question becomes, what now? What will you do with the fact that reality responds to your frequency, not your words? That your life mirrors your beliefs, your emotional tone, your assumptions, not your desires alone? That everything from your relationships to your health, your purpose to your inner peace, isn't waiting to be handed to you, it's waiting to be recognized as already within you, because the simulation is just that. A reflective field, a projection of your inner landscape. It cannot show you anything that you're not willing to see within yourself first. It doesn't move until you move. It doesn't change until you shift from within. So if you continue to live in reaction, in default programming, in fear or numbness or routine, then the simulation will match that energy. It will loop, recycle, repeat, not to punish you, but to give you another chance to wake up. But now you know. You've remembered enough to stop blaming the outer world and start recalibrating the inner one. That's where the transformation begins. Not in forcing change, but in becoming the version of yourself that is no longer waiting. The version that sees the whole setup for what it is, a beautifully complex feedback system responding not to effort, but to embodiment. The moment you live as if you are already free, already powerful, already divine, the world shifts around you like a dream responding to the dreamer. This is not about faking it. It's not about pretending you're enlightened. It's about aligning your state of being with what your soul already knows to be true. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to earn your worth or justify your awakening. You only need to trust the signal coming from within, the feeling of resonance when something is real, even if it's invisible, the peace that follows surrender, the pull toward authenticity that becomes unbearable to ignore. So how do you live in the simulation now that you see it for what it is? You live deliberately. You stop sleepwalking. You stop playing small. You stop waiting for the outside world to validate your existence. You start showing up every day as if your energy is the blueprint of what's to come, because it is. You start treating your thoughts like architecture, your emotions like navigational tools, and your intuition like sacred GPS. You start listening, not to the noise of the world, but to the stillness behind it. That's where the code is rewritten. And when challenges arise, as they will, you don't collapse into victimhood. You ask the higher question, what is this showing me about my frequency? About where I'm still asleep? Where I'm still holding on to something that doesn't align with who I'm becoming? The simulation uses friction not to crush you, but to reveal you, to refine the signal, to sharpen your awareness, so you stop cursing the obstacle and start mining it for information. What part of me created this? What version of me still believes I need this kind of lesson to evolve? The more conscious you become, the faster the feedback loop. The game speeds up. You think a thought, and suddenly it's on your doorstep. You carry resentment, and it shows up in your body. You shift into gratitude, and synchronicities unfold, like a domino chain. You begin to notice that time isn't fixed, that energy collapses into form faster than logic would allow. That the moment you feel something as true, it starts rearranging the field around you. That's the level you're playing at now. But with that power comes responsibility. No more pretending you didn't know. No more outsourcing your intuition to others. No more waiting for signs while ignoring the ones already screaming through your reality. You've been initiated, and while the world around you may still operate under the illusion of separation, you no longer have to. You can move through it as one who remembers, one who sees through the script and still chooses to play, not for escape, but for evolution. And what does evolution look like in this context? It looks like living each moment as a conscious act, choosing alignment over approval, truth over comfort, embodiment over performance. It looks like trusting that your path is not meant to look like anyone else's because your soul didn't come here for repetition, it came for expansion. It came to explore what only you could bring into this dimension. You're not here to wake up and then hide. You're not here to understand the matrix just to survive inside of it. You're here to walk through it, awake. To remember that this is the dream, and to shape it with the awareness that you are both inside it and beyond it. That dual awareness is your superpower. You are the actor and the author, the experiencer and the observer. And the more you embrace both, the more fluid reality becomes. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that awakening makes life easier. It doesn't. It makes it clearer. It burns away the illusions that once kept you safe, and sometimes that leaves you raw, exposed, uncertain. But clarity is a gift, even when it's uncomfortable. It puts the pen back in your hand. It returns authority to your own consciousness. And when you operate from that level, when you realize that life responds to who you are, not just what you do, then even the chaos begins to serve you. So what now that you know? You stop waiting. You stop hoping. You decide. You decide who you are, and you live it with every breath. Not to impress, not to ascend, but to embody. Because the simulation doesn't respond to performance, it responds to authenticity. It calibrates to your internal state. And the moment you shift from asking, "When will it happen for me?" to declaring, "It is me," the simulation reconfigures. New doors open, old patterns dissolve, and the path becomes visible, step by step, as you walk it. Not because someone gave you permission, but because you remembered. You were the architect all along.